everyone, it's me, Sean Capri, and this is the Extra Mile, the tag-along podcast to the Xbox Drive, where we talk about the games and services you care about the most. This week, we're going to talk about the best games of 2020, where Ryan played a whole bunch of games and I played some games, so jump on into the Xbox Drive. Blah, 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 next scene!
No power greater than X.
Hello, Sean Capri.
Hello, Ryan Turford. We're live. That's in case people didn't realize the weird intro. I'm operating OBS as we do this live on YouTube.com/the Xbox Drive. So the garbage fire continues on, but I think we're gonna have a good show tonight, my friend.
I mean, you're definitely our switcher director for this show, Sean. You're doing it well. You know, you're putting together a fancy show for all of our friends out there. But because, folks, it's our fanciest show of the year. It's our Game of the Year episode, our annual Game of the Year episode, where of course we talk about our favorite games of the previous year, and this time we're talking about 2020. We got lots of games to talk about, Sean. It's going to be an exciting evening because not only are we going to talk about our picks for Game of the Year, but we're also going to talk about some of the members of the community's favorite games of the year as well. By the way, folks, if you are watching on YouTube along with us and you would like to be part of the show, just let us know in chat what some of your favorite games of this year are, and we will read them out throughout the show as well. So if we do get some of those, we'll throw to them. Obviously, if you're listening at home, though, I'm going to throw this nice plug out there, because if you have already, youtube.com/the Xbox Drive, we are giving away 1 year of Xbox Game Pass when we hit 500 subscribers. So please, if you like what we do, please consider subscribing to us at youtube.com/the Xbox Drive, and you'll be entered in a sweet prize. Again, the only thing you have to do to enter is just subscribe. That's it. Then you're done. You're all entered and ready to go. So
Ryan,
Sean,
Ryan, I got a surprise. We haven't talked about this. I have a surprise.
I like surprises.
Okay, so people are jumping in the chat. We've got Xavier Reyes here. He plays Halo with us almost every Saturday. Great times. We're gonna play tomorrow, I think, as we're chatting.
I know that guy.
I've got this Jenga set that Xbox sent me. I've got this Jenga tower of power that they sent me. A lot of those blocks have Game Pass codes. Maybe we'll give away a couple Game Pass codes tonight. So the thing is, people shouldn't miss when we go live on YouTube. You just never know when we might just give away a couple codes of Game Pass. So maybe we'll do, at some point in the show, we'll ask people in the chat to submit like some of their best games and some of their favorite games. And if you do that, then maybe you'll win some Game Pass. How about that?
I'm a big fan of that. I think.
Okay, good. I was worried you'd say no.
I mean, worst case scenario, we can just say no later, Sean.
That's true.
We can just trick them. We'll welcome them in, and then we just take it away from them.
Nah, no, I'm taking those. Yeah.
No. All right, it's all good. Well, should we get into the proceedings?
Oh yeah, let me bring up my spreadsheet. I don't even have it prepared, so I don't know how you want to go about this. You lay
so
the law
we should
of the
start
land.
with. I was going to say we're going to start with honorable vengeance first, and
Okay.
then we're going to kind of get into our overall list, and we're going to
wait. Talk about like your overall gaming for 2020. Like, tell me how was 2020 for you? Obviously, the world was on fire, but like, was gaming good for you? Like, was this overall like a pretty good year for you? Is it mediocre? Like, where were you at?
So I actually think that 2020 was an okay year for games.
Yeah,
it wasn't amazing, but I think it was definitely better than 2019, because I think there were definitely there were more standout games this year and just a larger quantity of good games, I think, in 2020. It was definitely much harder to put together this list than it was last year to put together the 2019 list.
Yeah, I agree.
That makes any sense, especially even just on Xbox, because I actually have my own personal Game of the Year list that I always write for all the consoles every single year, and I had like a short list of 70 games on it.
Yeah.
And then this Xbox one, I had about 30 or 40, and then I had to really cut it down to basically make like 10 for tonight, you know? So I think there was a lot of variety of great games this year, but I also think even though we did get a lot of first-party releases from Microsoft this year, it still felt like a bit of a down year from Microsoft, because other than the one game that, of course, we're going to talk about a lot in the show, so I'm not going to dive in too deep on it now, we didn't really have another standout game from Microsoft besides that. We had Bleeding Edge, as well as some other games that Grounded. A lot of them just, though, flew under the radar or just didn't wow us the same way. And maybe it was just because we were so hyped up from that other game, that game being Ori, of course.
No, you're like avoiding it like it's a swear word or something.
Well, I mean, I know we're gonna say it a lot tonight. So I don't
Sure.
wanna
Okay.
talk
Yeah.
about
You don't
it.
want the count to be. I feel like there are fanboys out there who count the number of times that you say either Xbox or something about Xbox. If you're an Xbox, that's a whole other. That's an inside joke. Okay. Cool. So okay. I feel like there was lots of games that I played, and I actually like I'm like many of us. Like I've got a list of games that I played in, and the achievements kind of make it easy for us to track that sort of thing. So I've got them all down here, and I'm like, I just don't know like if these are worthy of like a top 10 or a top 5 or whatever. Like eventually I made them, and I'm pretty happy with my ordering here, but like I really do feel like yeah, I had a lot of fun playing games, but when we talk about like the best games, I just don't know if like really many of these like stand out in a big way. They're like there's one and there's a couple, but yeah, overall I just felt kind of down about the overall my approach to this thing. And that's kind of when I messaged you last week or the week before, where I was like, I just don't know how I feel about this, and maybe I need to like go experience more, dive deeper into some of these games, and I just don't know if that's really the case. But I'd love to know. This is why I love having the feedback from the community to see like what have we missed. Like maybe we didn't get to something that everybody else did. But yeah, or maybe I missed the mark on some of these games, or maybe they missed the mark for me. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to get like before we jump in, I just wasn't like it's kind of sad to realize that I wasn't like too crazy about overall the gaming of 2020, aside from a few exceptions.
Yeah, for sure. And again, there weren't too many like genre defining games or anything like that. But
That's
I do
a good
think
way to
again,
put it. Yeah.
the quality of games I think was higher overall, or at least we had more. I think we had a higher quantity of quality games this year than most other years of this generation. There are
Yeah.
some like 2017, for example, was a banner year.
Oh, for
Probably
sure.
the best year of this generation. And then even
I thought 18
equate
was
this
good
probably
too.
to, like I would say equate this to like 2018 is probably
Mhm.
what I would equate this. Where I think there was a lot of great games, but there wasn't like this. There was one pretty big standout game that again we're going to talk about, but for the most part, otherwise everything else was about the same level of quality. But again, we got a lot of quality.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to get the lay of the land. Now, what do you want to do? Sorry, I asked you what you wanted to do,
All
and I
right.
interrupted.
It's
Now
all
you're
good.
driving.
I mean, you just don't listen to me, Sean. I get it. No, we're gonna start with honorable mentions.
Okay.
Before we get into our main list, however we want to do this. Because by the way, we're gonna figure this out on air because Sean and I didn't talk about this ahead of time. So
I like to keep Ryan
I'm gonna-
guessing, as
Yeah,
long as
so-
long as he'll stick around for it.
So rather than me talk about a giant blab of stuff in a row about like 5 different games in a row, we're gonna kind of go back and forth.
Okay.
So I'm gonna start with my first honorable mention, and my first honorable mention is a little indie game I played over the summer that was new to Xbox this year, but actually came to Apple Arcade last year. It was an Apple Arcade exclusive, but it was its first time actually being on a normal console this year. So
Mhm.
that game being Shantae and the Seven Sirens from the folks
Oh.
at Way Forward. Really awesome Metroidvania game. I've always really liked the Shantae series, and I was really high on it when I first played it, and I didn't know how well it would sit with me throughout the course of the year. But then I went back and replayed it recently to kind of revisit it before we had this discussion today, and I loved it just as much as I did with the first time I played it. So it's a game that I've thought about a lot ever since playing it, and it's almost like a beginner's Metroidvania game in a way, where a lot of people complain about Metroidvania games being a little too difficult. Like a game like Hollow Knight, for example, might be
Definitely.
a little too difficult for some people to get into the genre. But if you've wanted to figure out what all the fuss is about Metroidvanias, and you want a really good one that just kind of eases you into the genre, I think Shantae and the Seven Sirens is exactly that. And even for someone like me who loves Metroidvanias and has kind of been in love with them forever, I still love my time with it. So I definitely wanted to give a shout out to it here.
Nice.
Especially because I know not a lot of people weren't talking about this one. I think a lot of people missed it this year. And it was also too because it came to Apple Arcade previously. So it's not
Right.
a new game, but to us Xbox fans, it's essentially a new game.
Well,
So
that
that's the
makes
way I
it.
look at it.
So I'm going to tell you mine because it actually flows into. I was going to save this for later, but a great example of that, not brand new game, but new to Xbox this year was new Super Lucky's Tale. Really, really good. I'm not going to go on and on about this game, but I just kind of want to give it a quick shout out because I thought it was like quite a bit better than the first one. Where maybe this is something that can stick around a little bit. Maybe this is a franchise that we want to have on Xbox. I think that it went first on Switch last year, but I played it first, and it like I played the first one not very long because it didn't really hold my interest. And then this one, like I didn't owe it anything, right? Like you can play as many games, and as Zero Skill in the chat says, like Game of the Year was Game Pass. And I think maybe that's why I kind of feel overall about the year that I do. I'm like, I played a lot of games thanks to Game Pass, but I just don't know that I played like the game. But yeah, shout out to new Super Lucky's Tale. Really solid 3D platformer, and they really stepped it up this time around.
Yeah, I did actually dip into that a little bit this year. And it's one of those games I've been meaning to go back to for a while because I really enjoyed the first hour or two that I played of it, and I think it's a fun game. And I just didn't give it the time it really deserved this year. So that's a good call. New Super Lucky's Tale.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to go into another one that I actually talked about a lot this year that I know a lot of people forgot about that also came out over the summer. And this was a Microsoft first party game that was underwhelmed some people, but for me, I had a blast playing it, and that's Battletoads.
No, I was going to get some Battletoads footage, and I didn't get Battletoads footage, but go ahead.
Ah, it's okay. Well, it's an honorable mention.
I had to guess which ones we were going to talk about. We're not prepared. So
yeah,
anyway.
What I loved about Battletoads is that it took the weird and quirky game design from the original games where they weren't really just side-scrolling beat-em-up games. They were more than that. They had mixed a whole bunch of genres together.
Right.
And then they evolved that formula in such an interesting and unique way. Yes, not everything that they did worked super well, but I do think that what was there was quality. Like, I loved playing that game. That the writing was actually surprisingly funny. Like, it looked really cringy from the trailers, but in the game itself, like, it was actually really funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually laughed a lot while playing it, and
so
the combat's a lot of fun. And I really loved playing it. The only downside is I wish I had local people to play it with because there's no online for the game. That's kind of my only like major critique. But otherwise, I loved my time with Battletoads. And it was definitely worthy of making an honorable mention for me. What about you, my friend?
You're so comprehensive. Like, that's exactly what I would have said. Like, it's a huge reason why I think it doesn't like land in a top 10 is because of the no online co-op. It would have been perfect. I would have loved to enjoy that game with friends. And I mean, what a year for any game to come out with no online option where it's only couch co-op because you're not allowed to have anybody over. You're locked in your house.
Exactly.
So we needed the option for some of these games, I think, to be enjoyed to the maximum. And Zero Skills in the chat again, like, he's just like me. I actually never finished it. And it's nothing against the game. I don't know, man. I wanted to play it with friends, and that felt like I was missing something as I was going through it. But love the writing, love the style. I love the way that the combat seemed to evolve through the game, or I learned how to get better at it, and the different genres, as you mentioned. I really like the game. Shout out to that game. But yeah, I don't know if it's more than just an honorable mention. By the way, are we doing top 10 or 5? Like, how far up my list should I be going here in terms of honorable mentions?
Well, I mean, you usually do your special top 10, Sean, where you do the reverse top 10. So I will say, don't dive more into your reverse top 10. So are you out of games at this point?
No, I have lots of games to talk about. I just want to know if we're like our official list starts at 10 and we'll do our top 10 games of the year. Or are we doing our top 5? Like,
we can do top 5 reverse 5. We're going to do top 5 reverse 5. That's what we're going to do this year. So Sean,
right.
Do you have another honorable mention, or are we going to dive into the top?
Whatever you want to do, man. I've got lots. I mean, I could throw in. I might even just throw another wrench in the whole thing. We'll do our top 5. I'll throw in a bunch of games before I talk about my next one.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah. So it won't even be. I'm just going to screw this up even more for you. Okay. So my number 5 best game of the year is Hyperdot. Hyperdot came out at the beginning of the year. I think it's a game-ass game. There's no story involved. It's just you fire this thing up, and eventually came to Game Pass, and it's a little arcade kind of like what they had a great word for it. Instead of a shoot 'em up, it was like a dodge 'em all kind of thing. You got your little dot, and you're trying to get around all the other shapes that are trying to attack you. And I just fired it up again just to kind of see like, is this game really good? And it's really special, man. Like, the music is excellent. It's just a chill game. There's tons of levels, and the way that it progresses you through the levels and throws different scenarios at you is it's instantly gratifying. Like, as soon as you pick up your controller and start playing it, you're just amazed at all the variations that come at you with this game. It looks like a pretty basic top-down 2D kind of geometric shapes coming at you, and then lighting comes in, and you're like, holy crap, this game is actually gorgeous. So a lot of thought, a lot of love went into this game, and I think it's got legs. I think everybody should play it. And also, I think it's something that doesn't really get talked about too much when we talk about the best games of the year. Like, games like this don't really tend to make a top 5. But it was memorable for me. And anytime I see anybody or hear anybody talk about it, I get excited. So for those reasons, Hyperdot is my number 5 game of the year for 2020.
That's a fantastic pick. It was actually an honorable mention for me because I also really loved my time with Hyperdot. But it was just one of those things where I think for me personally, it wasn't as memorable. Like I wasn't really thinking about it after I played it, if that makes any sense. Like I played through all the levels and had a great time doing it. And again, all the things that you said about Hyperdot make perfect sense. I love kind of like the design of each level and just the way the colors contrast everything. And I love all that stuff. And the music's great, as you mentioned. It just didn't leave a lasting impact on me, I think.
Well, could you beat it? Because you're a good gamer. Like I still have levels to go back and beat. Like it's hard. By the time you get into the 90s, holy snap, dude! Those levels are hard.
It gets very difficult. But I love that there's just a litany of options available to you to really help you get through those later levels as well, if you want to take advantage of them. But for you and I are both stubborn and weren't taking advantage of them.
I'm not sure that I knew about those. I think I might need to ask you what those are later.
I mean, you probably just didn't play too much in some of the accessibility options, but
no, I don't think I did.
But yeah, Hyperdot, fantastic game,
Very
and definitely
cool.
a great pick from you, Sean. So, so you gave me your number 5, so I'm gonna give you my number 5, Sean. My number 5 is actually a game published by Microsoft. It is a little game that I did a spoiler cast on earlier this summer with our good friend Donnie Reese over at the Xbox Empire. That game is Tell Me Why, from Don't Nod. Fantastic game telling the story of this brother and sister who basically return to their small Alaskan town after basically the brother is released from juvie, essentially, after basically murdering their mother. It's a whole story. Again, I'm not going to dive too much into it, but it was a fantastic story from top to bottom. And what I will say, the gameplay was interesting, but it wasn't really... It didn't really grab you in a lot of ways, but the story, the characters, the town itself that it takes place in, all of them, that was fantastically well crafted by Don't Nod. And yeah, I love Tell Me Why. I loved all 3 episodes. I love that it wasn't 5 episodes. It was only 3 episodes this time. So it was the shorter runtime. I felt like forced them to condense their stories a little bit, because one of the things that I've always kind of complained a little bit about with Don't Nod's games is that the third and fourth episodes are kind of middling a little bit with a lot of their series. Like they feel stretched a little bit with Life is Strange versus Tell Me Why. It just didn't really feel like that. Like there were a couple of down moments, but for the most part, it just went straight through from start to finish. And you could finish it probably in a day, in about 8 hours or so. So I loved my time with Tell Me Why. And I'm so happy that Microsoft actually took a chance on this game and helped actually publish it, because I think that we might not have seen this type of game come otherwise, especially because it does deal with some risky subject matter that we don't see a lot of other games deal with.
Right.
And I don't know how many other publishers would want to take that type of story on. So I'm actually really glad
and do it right as well. Like not only want to try it, but also like treat it with the respect and just the storytelling that it deserves. I think I've heard you and Donnie talk about this a lot, that's not the central piece of the story. It's actually like everything else with the family and the mom and everything like that. I'm very interested in this game. This is not necessarily something, like I've talked about this before. Like these games aren't necessarily anything that like really, really get me hyped. Like I like these games when I play them, I enjoy them, but it's not something I'll like push kids out of the way to rush and go play them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like the Don't Nod's games are the type of games where, like, if you just feel like, binge watching a show one day, instead of booting up Netflix, you just boot up Tell Me Why, and then you binge watch that essentially instead.
Yeah, I might do that actually right away here. We've got a bit of an opening, Ryan. There's not a lot of games happening in January,
you see
February,
this,
March.
Scott Pilgrim's out in 4 days. Sean.
That's true. We may have some discussion on that pretty soon, actually.
Probably. But Sean, give me your next game. What's your next game?
I will get into my number 4, but shout out to Gears 5 Hive Busters. That was a great experience that definitely is deserve of mention. But my number 4, I don't know, does this count? This is a weird one. It's technically new. Tetris Effect Connected is my number 4 game, and I played it. I played it previously on PlayStation, but this added multiplayer. And I love the multiplayer mode on this. It's just really chill to like jump on a voice chat with some friends. And I mean, like when you've got a Tetris game that is this chill, this new and innovative, but still holds true to what Tetris really is, it just kind of blows your mind. And it's almost like a Winamp visualization kind of game. It's just really solid. And pretty sure Game Pass. I think I played this on Game Pass.
Yep, it's still on Game Pass. It was day and date.
This game, I feel like there's not a whole heck of a lot, honestly, to say about it, other than like it's just a beautiful experience. Like it's just a lovingly crafted game, and actually really great on, I'm sure on the One X as well, but on Series X, it's just mind blowing. Playing this in 4K and all the colors and all the frames, it looked really great. And yeah, just true to Tetris. I love Tetris Effect Connected, my friend.
And the one thing I will say about it too that I think not enough people give credit for the game for is actually the multiplayer. Like
Right.
the multiplayer is fantastic with a bunch of different modes and different ways to play it, both in co-op and competitive for multiplayer. Like even though we haven't played it too often, like we played with Joel, aka Falcon, and some other members of the community, and I had a great time playing it.
Yeah.
Like I thought the multiplayer was great for that game, but also again, it's just if you want a chill game, like that's probably the chillest game of 2020.
Well, and it's one that I can
Tetris
just
Effect.
fire up. Like that's the thing it's lasting. I mean, it's kind of a cheat because it's Tetris, but that game will never come off my hard drive. I will always have it on there. I can always go back to it if I'm ever kind of in between games. Like it might take over Rocket League for that palate cleanser type of game that I've got. And also, it's the one where I go, I'm just gonna play like one round, and then I end up playing it for 45 minutes or an hour and a half, kind of a thing.
Yeah, you definitely get lost in it. It's like when I because I have basically a DS stored in my drawer, Sean, with a copy of Tetris DS, the
Oh, heck
cartridge,
yeah.
just permanently in it. Whenever I just want to play some Tetris DS, it's always pretty much just ready to go right there. And I like hardly ever play any other DS games because it's just Tetris DS. That's the only game you need. It's got Nintendo characters. It's got Tetris. I mean, what else do you need, right? Tetris is awesome for that. Well, Sean, since you gave a game a little shout out like that, I'm gonna follow suit and give a game a little shout out. That little game, of course, Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memories. It's Kingdom Hearts. It's music. It's got Goofy and Donald and Sora and music and Sephiroth. It's weird. It's a weird game, but it's a lot of fun. But my number 4 that I'm gonna go with this year is Resident Evil 3. It's my number 4 game on Xbox this year. And yes, you saying to yourself,
I would really like hold that against this game. It's like it's short and I can finish it. Awesome. Like
I would say of the Resident Evil games, Sean, this is probably the one most approachable for you, Sean Capri, because it's the most digestible one, I think, because you can beat it in like an afternoon.
I'm in. I'm in.
You don't have to spend a whole day, but like a whole day and night playing. But obviously, for an $80 Canadian game, you expect a little bit more than that sometimes.
Right, yeah, it was full price, wasn't it? Yeah, I definitely didn't pay.
Yeah.
I didn't even pay $80 for the 2 games, or the 3 if you count Resistance.
Well, I mean, when you buy Resident Evil 3, it comes with the Resistance multiplayer.
Right.
So it actually is both those for the $80 price. So
yeah, nope,
just
didn't
know
pay that. You just gotta wait. You gotta be patient.
Exactly. All right, what's your next surprise game, Sean?
I gotta give a shout out to. I'll do 2 really quickly right now. NHL 94 Rewind, which is on Game Pass. The you play NHL 94 with current hockey rosters. It just brought back a whole bunch of fun for me. I got all but one achievement, which I'm giving up on. I've now deleted the game, but goodness gracious, I had a lot of fun with that for maybe a week or 2 earlier this year. And also shout out to Carrion. I know you and I were a little bit different, landed differently on this game, but I thought it was really, really different. This monster Metroidvania type of game where very like non-linear in nature. You play this just hideous monster eating all these, destroying all the environments and eating all the humans as you try to escape, and you gain up all your powers as you grow larger and larger. I thought the movement was excellent. The mood and the setting was awesome. But goodness gracious, man, I really enjoyed Carrion. So those are my shout outs. But my what are we at? Number 3? Oh, okay.
Number 3.
I'm wondering where this one is going to land. I feel like you're about to talk about this game too. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I wish was actually higher on my list than number 3. I've fallen off of it a little bit, but I've got to have Assassin's Creed in my top 5. This game, like these Assassin's Creed games have become top tier. These are almost like required gaming. If you like games with role-playing game elements, if you like games that have an open world, if you just want to like jump into a sandbox, it's like, I don't know. I don't look at like Grand Theft Auto as the gold standard like some people do. I look at what Ubisoft has done. It's the dopamine hit that you are getting when you upgrade your gear, when you go raid or do a siege and you just go take over, or when you clear a map of all the things that there are to do. Like they've been very dynamic with it over the years as well. Like they've treated this open world differently than they did with Odyssey, and I really appreciate it. The only thing that I would say as a knock again is like, I kind of wish I was playing as male Ivor because but I feel locked in. I feel like I can't like jump over to.
Well, I was just gonna say you're
male.
allowed to switch at any time.
I
Sean.
know.
You just
I
press
haven't
one
yet,
button.
though. I haven't. But this game is enormous. Like this game is it's kind of like on the opposite end of what you're talking about with Resident
It's
Evil.
70 hours.
Minimum. It feels like it's
Minimum.
Like what did you do? Like you did like 70 hours and you had like 60% done or something
Yeah.
ridiculous like that.
Yeah, it was actually lower than 60% at 70 hours. And I
Yeah.
completed
So
the game.
this was the game. This was the game. You and I talked about this too when the Series X launched. Like this is what you should have been playing. You know what I mean? Like this is the one that like really it set the standard for 4K 60 frames per second, and also demonstrated that hey, games can exist on next gen or whatever we're at now and last gen consoles, and still like it doesn't look held back to me. Like it looks gorgeous and plays incredible, and I'll continue to play this for a couple more months at the very least.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, this segues nicely into my number 3, Sean, because my number 3 is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. We're on the same page on this one.
Yeah, man.
No, I mean, and as someone who completed the game, this is definitely my number 3 as well. And again, I loved my time with it. I loved going around England and Norway and other places and just having a great time, like pillaging villages and tackling the larger story, but also getting to find all the little secrets all around England. I loved all of that stuff. And again, I don't think it's as strong as a game as Odyssey was. I do think that Odyssey is still like the de facto number 1 game in that series, I think, for me personally.
Yeah.
But I did really love Valhalla, definitely much more than Origins, for sure.
Yeah.
Which was actually, and
yeah,
again,
now
it
we
was
have
the
to
same
rank
team that
them.
did Origins.
Now
Yeah.
you have to rank the 3 of them. Origins,
well, I
Odyssey,
mean,
Valhalla.
Yeah, Odyssey is at the top, then Valhalla, then Origins. For me.
I think it's tough to do. Like you definitely said that very definitively, but I feel like it's like they're all so close. I really loved Origins. Man, it's been kind of like because they're not year after year after year now. Like this now we're
Yeah.
talking about 3 games spanning what 5-6 years now.
Yeah, because the Origins actually came out at the same time as the Xbox One X did. Like it
Yeah.
was a One X launch
Yeah,
title. It was,
2017.
2017. Yeah. So, yeah, I and again that doesn't take anything away from Origins. I really like that game as well. But I think the team who did Valhalla, which is the same from Origins, really just upped their game with this one and just added so much more. Like the story, I just felt was so much more intriguing this time around, especially when you get farther into the story. It gets really good.
It
Like,
really
once it
does.
gets going, it really gets going.
It's
just,
that
it's a
true.
little bit of a slow start.
It's that true RPG thing. Like you just gotta play like 25 hours and then it really gets going, which is kind of insane. But
It's the Final Fantasy 13 syndrome. Play
but
the
it's
first
not like
25 hours.
But you're gonna have fun for those first 25 hours as well.
yeah.
But then it like really ramps up. So
Yeah, exactly. And again, once the story gets going, like I could not put that game down after the story ramped up. But before we get back to you, Sean, I'm gonna again throw another quick shout out, and then we're gonna go to the community. So my next quick shout out is to Streets of Rage 4. It was my number 8 on the list, and I really love my time with Streets of Rage 4. Again, it was basically the resurrection of an old franchise I loved on Sega Genesis, and we hadn't had a new Streets of Rage game since Streets of Rage 3 on the Genesis. So it was cool to see that franchise come back this year, and really just, they really breathed new life into that franchise and didn't tinker with it too much, but tinkered with it in all of the right ways. And I loved Streets of Rage 4. I thought it was fantastic. But
Very
Sean,
cool.
let's hear from some of our friends from the community. Of course, I put this out to Twitter, asking people what some of their favorite games were for the year. So we're actually going to start with Joey Splats. All right, Sean.
I'm glad that he at least wanted to apologize. We've got people in the chat saying like, just eat it, basically. I still like Animal Crossing, but you know what? I love that people submitted games across like all platforms when they were talking about their game of the year to the Xbox Drive. I think that's cool, man. And
Yeah, I definitely encourage that as well too, because people kept asking us, "Oh, did they have to be Xbox ones?" I'm like, no, like whatever game brought you joy this year, that's what we want to hear. So, I mean, we're sticking to Xbox because we're an Xbox show, Sean. Because that just makes sense. But I'm next up. I'm gonna bring Seamus McIsaac, who I know is watching this very late at night. And Seamus McIsaac says, number 3, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. He says it's simply beautiful. Number 2, Hades, which was insanely fun according to him. And then number 1 for Seamus McIsaac, Spider-Man Miles Morales, with an amazing story, characters, and gameplay. And Seamus McIsaac, I played that game over the holidays, and let me tell you, I loved it. So I'm actually in agreement with you, not so much in the placing of Miles Morales, because I don't know where it fits on my overall list, but I loved that game as well. So I'm glad that you enjoyed that. And again, Hades, I know, Sean, you're playing it and having a good time with it as well. So
yeah, man.
there you go.
Yeah. Playing with an Xbox controller, so it counts.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I'm going to save the other 2 for later, Sean.
Do it.
We're gonna go. We're gonna go back to. We're gonna go back to you on this one, Sean.
Oh, okay.
What game you want to talk about next?
I'll talk a little bit about 2 games. Grounded, I thought was really cool and kind of unexpected, at least for me, how much I liked it. And I'm looking forward to like them actually finishing the game. So it's kind of like, I feel like I'm not sure if I would actually want to even consider putting it in my top 5 just because it's not done yet. I'll wait until that actually is finished. And what is not in my top 5 is Immortals Phoenix Rising. And it probably would have been if I didn't have that save trouble that was happening. I was losing my progress a couple of times, wasn't able to continue going with it. But like I was at that moment, like I made my decision, I made my commitment, Ryan, to Immortals. I was like, I'm ready. I'm actually going to put Assassin's Creed on pause for a second. I'm going to play into this game. And it unfortunately didn't work out for me, but goodness gracious, I love the style of it. I love, it's lighthearted, right? Like after such a challenging year and as much of a quality of game as Assassin's Creed is, this one offered a bit of a different and lighter experience where I just didn't feel like every decision, every move was going to be like the end of the world. It just felt very fun and, just free spirited. So I really like this game, but it was more of a shout out than anything. I feel like I'm going on about it. Where are we at? Number 2? Number two is a real one. Okay. Joey Splats is going to be very happy about this because my number 2
Is
game.
it Animal Crossing New Horizons?
No, it's his number 2. It's Doom Eternal.
Ooh.
Doom Eternal is it's more than just the next Doom game. Like if you've played it and you're starting to think like maybe this is just another just more of like the first Doom from 2016. It really isn't, man. And I heard Donnie and Elaine over at the Xbox Empire talking about this, and I went back and saw some of the game footage that I had streamed and some stuff that I had saved and some of the moments, like some of the best moment-to-moment gameplay of the year. And this is like you and I chat about this every year when we do these things. Like gameplay is king for me. That's why Hyperdot is so high up on my list because, like, yes, Assassin's Creed has great story, and sure, Doom Eternal has a nonsense story, but like gameplay is absolutely top notch. It's so finely tuned. This game runs so smooth, and it's a great example of like, why don't you just show what your machines can do? This engine is it's buttery smooth, as you would say. And I have so many great memories of it. I'm watching the trailer play as we're talking about this, and it's like, of course this is my number 2 game. It's like, it's so maniacal and over the top. It's like, it's basically what Mortal Kombat has done in its reimagining of how over the top violent it is. It's just perfect, man, in that way. So shout out to Doom Eternal. Shout out to Doom Eternal for taking it to the next level over Doom 2016, but still retaining a lot of what made that special when we got renewed into the franchise at that point, my friend.
Very nice. Yeah, Doom Eternal was one of my most anticipated games going into this year. And while I did really love it, I personally just was a little more disappointed than when comparing it to Doom 2016, which even though the movement tech and the gameplay is more improved this time around, I don't know, something about Doom Eternal just felt off to me, which is why actually it made number 7 on my list, Sean.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually one of my first set of shoutouts for transitioning back to me. I actually really liked Doom Eternal. I liked it a lot, but there were games that it just didn't grab me the same way as Doom 2016 did. And I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it was just that it was not as fresh as Doom 2016. Maybe that's what it was. But I still really enjoyed my time with it. It just, for some reason, just didn't crack my top 5.
Right.
So, but I did really enjoy my time with it. Another game that I really enjoyed and talked a lot about this year that didn't crack my top 5 and made number 6, Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time, was my number 6 game. I loved playing that game a lot. I loved the fact that Crash Bandicoot finally got like a worthy successor to his legacy. Yes, I'm someone, and this is something for someone who, like me, who didn't like Crash at all growing up,
Right.
but loving 3D platformers And playing this game, I just fell in love with it, Sean, like in a way that I was not expecting. And like Toys for Bob did an amazing job with this game, and they definitely have to be commended because I actually really loved Crash Bandicoot 4 from top to bottom. And you've heard me talk about it a lot this year. I know you're groaning because I know you don't like Crash Bandicoot, but again, I was the naysayer like you before I played this game.
You know,
And
that's
then-
just it. I didn't play it, so I mean, I can't. It doesn't really matter what I say. Like, good for you for playing something that you weren't really sure about, or that you don't have like a lot of love for, and you gave it a true chance, and then it really surprised you. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. So really surprising game for that. I was surprised I liked it as much as I did,
Mm-hmm.
and it definitely got oh so close to inching out. Tell Me Why, but I think the story in that game kind of put it over.
I
the
gotta
top.
play
When
Tell
you
Me
roll-
Why. Can I guess your number 2? Can I guess it?
Sure.
I think it might be Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2.
Nope, it didn't even make my list.
Get
It
out,
didn't
really?
Make my honorable mentions.
Really? Oh, okay, then, And it's not Doom
No.
because you kind of downplayed that a little bit. What the heck was it?
So you're gonna talk about my number 2 after I finish talking about my number 2, because my number 2 game is Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Sean.
Mm.
It is not. I told you before. In fact, I told you weeks ago that it was not my number 1.
Actually,
game
that's
on
true. You
Xbox
did tell
this
me
year.
that.
I did forewarn you about it, but I know you forget because we're old and we forget things.
Yeah.
But Ori and the Will of the Wisps, I'm gonna give you a chance to jump in on it after I'm done talking.
Yeah, let's do
about
it. Let's
But,
go.
I really loved my time with Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I thought it was a fantastic experience from top to bottom. My experience was ruined a little bit during the review period because unfortunately we could barely play the game because of a whole bunch of bugs.
Yeah.
I have gone back and played the game since the review, and like you talked about previously, a lot of that the stuff that we ran into while playing it has been fixed. But I played it again and kind of tried to remind myself because actually for a while Ori was actually at the top of my list, and it wasn't until I went back and played both my number 2 and number 1 games that I actually decided to swap them around because I realized that I actually like my number 1 game a little bit more. And again, this comes down to just my own personal enjoyment. I think Ori and the Will of the Wisps is one of the best Metroidvanias I have ever played, and I love Metroidvanias. I didn't really love the first Ori. For whatever reason, I couldn't get into it. I loved the visuals and the music in the first game, but for whatever reason, the gameplay just didn't really jive with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what they improved with the gameplay this time around, from the melee combat to the traversal this time around, just really clicked with me. And I, again, could not put, this is another game I couldn't put down from the time I started playing it until the time that my Xbox couldn't run it, and then I had to switch to my PC, and I couldn't run it there. But even without that, I still really enjoyed my time with it. And yeah, it's my number 2. I'm actually probably as surprised as you are that I'm not saying it's my number 1 this year for Xbox, but yeah, it's my number 2 game this year.
I can't be sad until I find out what is your number 1. I can only imagine.
Then you can complain.
Then I might be complaining a little bit. I might as well just like we've kind of spoiled it a little bit, but that's okay. Ori and the Will of the Wisp is one of not just the best games of this year. I feel like it's one of the best games of the entire generation. Like you said, it is the best Metroidvania. It controls perfectly. It has some of the best character design. It has some of the best art. It has some of the best music. It has some of the best or moment-to-moment gameplay. The way that the game unveils itself to you from moment to moment it's damn near perfect, man. I don't look for a game to rip my heart out and tear it into shreds. That is not a criteria I'm looking for something to be like, oh yeah, this is where games should go. That's not what I'm looking for. But I replayed this, as I mentioned on the show. I replayed it over the holidays on hard, and it's incredibly challenging. But what playing on hard did, not to be flexing over here, what it did was it forced me to juggle my abilities a little bit. Where when I played it on normal, I just left it. And it actually made the experience way more colorful for me. It was like I almost wanted loadouts, honestly. Like, so when I was up against the boss, I wanted a different loadout versus when I'm just kind of like traversing into the world. Because I was able to trade in some abilities versus others. This is a shining example of what is possible as far as what you can play on Xbox. And I want more people to play this. Like a key reason this is my game of the year is because I want to shout from the top of a mountain to say everybody should be playing this game. And if you've never played a Metroidvania, like this is where you should start. I think I want to just jump back to the character design as well. Like it gets into it's character design and art style and the visual performance overall. Like the game glows in a way that it actually impacts your connection to the characters and the love that these characters all have for each other. And then when things are torn apart, it's so meaningful. And I can't help but get chills when I think about my experience and some of the things that happen to some of these characters. And again, no spoken word at all. There's mostly like mumblings, and there's a giant frog or toad in a swamp. And the things that happen to these different characters, it's like, what even is this? It's so wondrous and imaginative, and it just kind of stretches the boundaries. Like Doom is great because it reimagines what video games used to be to us, which was pick up a double barrel shotgun and just blow monsters in the face. Like that was what video games used to be. This to me just pushes the boundaries of what it can look like, what it can feel like, and how it can challenge you in a way, but also make you feel like this is such a top quality story. I wish more people would play this game. I don't understand what is going on when this is not such a widely spread, like why this isn't ubiquitous, why this isn't everybody's game of the year. So I'm kind of yelling at you a little bit here as well. But I could just scream for hours and hours and days. I will play Ori and the Will of the Wisps again and again and again. It is just so, it's heartfelt. You can actually, as you play it, you're like, I'm actually thanking the devs as I'm playing, like, thank you for making this. And you can see the care and attention in a similar way to like Inside, like what Playdead does with Inside when they've got that tight experience, and you can see every animation, every frame of animation is just masterfully done. I feel that way with Ori, which is a much larger experience. It's non-linear, like you can do whatever you want. They've expanded pretty much everything that they had in the Blind Forest, but didn't make it unmanageable. They still made the game playable and digestible. You wanted to get through the side quests. Some of them kind of went on and they took you all over the map, but just it encouraged you to do exactly that. It encouraged you to jump all over the map. And few characters feel as good to play as Ori. The way that he jumps, double jumps, triple jumps, the way he sticks to the wall, the way that he can kind of like float in the air, the way that he dashes through enemies or the glowing orbs. I could go on and on and on. There's not one bit of this game that I think is subpar. Even the menus are gorgeous. I could go on and on. Absolutely the game of the year, and I challenge you to wax poetic on your game of the year as much as I just went on for Ori and the Blind Forest.
I don't know. You got a pretty passionate take on Ori, and I'm actually I'm glad that it really resonated with me in the same way too. Like it'd been so long since I had first played it, and yeah, like that ending like brought me to tears, man. Like I was really moved by that game in a way I wasn't expecting. Again, without a spoken line of dialogue throughout the whole experience, other than like brr, 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 like very like animal talking, I guess, And honestly, yeah, I loved Ori from top to bottom. And again, like you said, there wasn't a wasted moment. And in my number one game, I firmly believe that there was no wasted moment in that game either. And for all the same reasons you talked about with Ori, where you wanted to shout from the rooftops for people to play this game, and no one's playing it and no one is talking about it, that kind of goes hand in hand with my number one too, which is why I even think you probably couldn't even predicted my number one.
I don't know if I have the footage for this, man.
You probably don't. But before I get into it, because I'm gonna leave it with that real quick, because I want to give my final shout outs before we get to my number one.
Okay.
Immortals Phoenix Rising, for all the things you touched on before, so I'm not going to dive too deep into it. It's a game, again, that just came to me at the wrong time, I think, because I had come off of playing Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs and finishing them both, and I just didn't have the energy to finish another open world game. So unfortunately, I think that's part of the reason why it didn't crack my list. But I did love what I played as well, just like you talked about before. Star Wars Squadrons, another game that people forgot about as well. I loved kind of the return to a Star Wars flight game, and I really loved my time with Squadrons. The multiplayer was kind of so-so, like we didn't have a ton of fun playing that, but man, that single player campaign was fantastic. And
I got to get back to that.
We're kind of 2 for 2 for good Star Wars games from EA, so I'm glad that EA took a chance with this one, and there was no microtransactions or crazy DLC coming, and we got some cool additions to the game, like the B-Wing, for example. So they were adding to it as well, and I love my time with it. And then last game I'm going to shout out, which is going to anger the chat, but I have to say it. It's Marvel's Avengers is my last shout out, because no game did I play longer this year than Marvel's Avengers, because I sunk over 100 hours into Marvel's Avengers. And honestly, I had a really good time with it, even though I didn't love the games of servicey stuff in it. I just really liked going around that world and playing as those heroes in a game, because We've never really had that before in a lot of other games. The last time I played as the Avengers in a video game, besides Marvel vs. Capcom, was Captain America and the Avengers on the Super Nintendo, which was not a very faithful Avengers game. So it was cool to actually get to play as those characters. But Sean, I've kept you waiting.
No, I want you to wait.
At home.
I want you to make people wait more because Xavier Ray is in the chat saying like, "Come on, the suspense! Like, let's go." So why don't you jump over to the community? Let's see what the community has to say. Do we have any more submissions from them?
We have 2 more submissions actually. In fact, actually, Sean, while I read these, I think we should get people to start getting ready to start putting their list together to send us for giveaways.
Definitely.
So I'm going to start with Zaka at Zaka Gamer, and he says number 3, Yakuza Like a Dragon, a game that Ryan famously couldn't get into, but I know Yakuza fans absolutely loved, and I think that's a great pick for anyone who likes Yakuza games. Number 2, Final Fantasy VII Remake, a game that I really loved, and I just can't wait for that game to finally come to Xbox, so I have an excuse to play it again. And then number 1, for whatever reason, this game's PlayStation exclusive, but Nioh 2 from Team Ninja is Zaka's number 1 game. A Souls-like game from Team Ninja that I actually really enjoyed as well, Zaka. It came close to making my personal Game of the Year list if I was to include all platforms. But Nioh 2, I know a lot of people really love that game. And it's just a shame that game's not on Xbox. Like, I can't believe that game is on Sony. And the last one that we have from our community over on Twitter is Nintendo Pals, at Nintendo Pals. And they say, number 3, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Yeah, I can tell you can already see the slide. Number 2, Hades. And number 1 with a bullet. Sorry, Sean Capri, it's Animal Crossing New Horizons once again. And even Nintendo Pals also apologize too for this.
Everybody knows, man. My stance on Animal Crossing is well known. My reputation precedes me, I guess. But you know what, man? I'm glad this was the game that people needed this year, so it's fine. I'm gonna try and still play it, but not on my Xbox, obviously.
For sure.
Okay. Have we held
You ready
people
for
up?
this?
Yeah. I don't know if I am, man. I don't know if I am.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm ready for your disappointment, but it's a game that to be honest, we talked about this game, and by we, I mean, you had to listen to me talk about this game at length over the summer when I played it for the first time. It was a game that came to Xbox for the first time this year, but it actually released 2 years ago on PC only, and it was a very, very tiny game. No one else played, but it's on Game Pass, so you can go play it right now. My number 1 game of 2020 is Crosscode. Crosscode is it's a Zelda-like in like this MMO framing. So of course you can already tell that appeals to Ryan Turford's heart right there. It was an incredible experience from top to bottom. I loved just exploring the world of Crosscode and basically Cross Worlds, which is this MMO that Leah, the main character, has to go into to kind of recover her lost memories because she actually has amnesia in the real world, and she goes into this virtual reality MMO to basically recover all of her memories. And the gameplay was absolutely fantastic. It took the Zelda dungeon formula with all of the puzzle solving from Link to the Past, but then just like spun it on its head and made it a ton harder. And I just loved Crosscode. I actually knew over the summer that as soon as I put that game down after 35 hours of playing it, that this was the game to beat. And there was nothing else at the time that I had played, to me, that was more fun than Crosscode. And it's a game that it's just a shame because, again, it was a really small release on PC 2 years ago. And people got a little bit excited about it when it was coming to consoles. But I don't think enough people played this game, Sean, at all this year. Because, like, no one talked about Crosscode at all this year. But from the amazing visuals to the fantastic story to the incredible music in Crosscode to the excellent visual design. And again, just like Ori, as you described with that game, there is not a dull moment in Crosscode from start to finish. Like, that game is a polished masterpiece from top to like, from start to finish. And yeah, I couldn't believe that this was a game that I liked more than Ori, because Ori was a game that, again, like I told you before, it's not easy to break my like top 3 Metroidvanias of all time chart, because I love Metroidvanias. And for Ori to do that and still not be my number 1 game just shows you how much fun I had with Crosscode this year. And I think that definitely the developer just doesn't get enough talk about this game. And because again, it is an older game. But for us console players, it was a brand new game this year, and yeah, Crosscode's my number 1 game, Sean. I can't believe
it was a surprisingly, like, it was it was optimized for Series X and S like on day one. It's like of all
Yeah.
the games, like it's this pixel art kind of like top down isometric kind of view with anime characters that pop up every once in a while. Very cool game, man. I want to jump back into this one. You know what? I didn't really describe this at the top of the show. Like my year was distracted, I think is the really word that I would use, even more so than usual. I'm typically a pretty kind of ADD type of gamer where I jump from one thing to the next, but I felt like I was really just trying to search for something to sink my teeth into, and it didn't happen as often as I wanted to. And it's something, I think it's more me than anything, in just the year that many of us had. But because I feel bad that I didn't play Crosscode as much as I wanted to. I played maybe for like an hour or two and just kind of like bounced off to the next thing. But I should give it another chance, because you and I actually like. It's very rare when you say like a game is really good and I play and I'm like, no, this game's garbage. Like that very rarely happens. It's more of a product of like how much time do I have to get around to a game. But I feel like I want to jump to this game. It is on Game Pass. I want to get to it. So right, I feel like I pause every time, because we're very fortunate. It makes it a little bit difficult, and I hope people understand what I mean when I say this. Like we get access to like a lot of codes. I'm like, I think this one was Game Pass, or did we get codes for it?
No, it's definitely on. I think we might have got an ID and Xbox code for it, but it was definitely on Game Pass as well.
Okay, yeah. So like many people have access to it, and yeah, what a courageous choice. I feel like I want to make fun of it because it's not like a big game. It's not Ori, so I want to slam it. But yeah, very different, man. And I think that's cool. People are putting their top 3 into the chat. I'm seeing some trolls in there, but do you want to pick a couple people who are sharing their top 3 of the year?
Sure. So I'm actually going to go down the list. We're going to start with Console Kato, because I think she was the first to submit her top 3s anyways, unless I scroll farther up a little bit.
Yeah,
I think people are just talking about Avengers. So we're going to start with Console Kato, Sean. And she says Fall Guys was her number 3 game, Sean, which is a game that actually you and I played a lot this year and actually had a lot of fun with. So that's actually a pretty good choice. Number 2, and a game that I admittedly didn't play a lot of this year because I don't jump into open matchmaking with people, Among Us was her number 2. And then number 1, Animal Crossing, Sean. It's back. She didn't play many new games this year, apparently, because Animal Crossing. Because I think you were telling me that Kato had played, like over 200 to 300 hours of Animal Crossing this year.
Oh, I think it's got to be. I think it was like 800 hours or something like that. And by the way,
God, that's even more.
Everybody should go, definitely, if you're listening to this, and if I feel like there's so much crossover with what people are interested in, and a lot of people tell us that they don't even play Xbox, but they listen to our show. So thank you guys for all of that. YouTube.com/ConsoleKato has honestly got to be one of the best Animal Crossing channels on the internet. She is so good at it, and she's new to YouTube, and she's just taken off like crazy. We're very lucky that she's a friend of the show. We play Halo with her, and she is just insanely good, man. It's not even fair. It's just headshots like crazy. And she has a lovely YouTube channel that people should definitely check out. I'm glad that she's here sharing the Game of the Year chat with us.
I'm glad she corrected us. Over 1,200
over 1,200 hours. Yeah, I think I was 800 hours with one of her islands. So she's got so much dedication to it. She buys multiple Switches, multiple copies of the game, which is my problem with the game, but I'm not that I'm mad about it.
Also, I love that she says this, but then she was making fun of me last night when we were talking about World of Warcraft on my live stream with her last night, playing some Resident Evil 2, and she's making fun of me that I told her I played the game for over a year my entire life, Sean. I played 365 days of playtime in World of Warcraft, which is a lot.
Oh my god.
Next up, I'm gonna go to Marcus O'Neill, and he says his number 3 is Hades. Again, we've heard a lot of tonight.
Yeah, it's a good game.
Ori's his number 2 as well, Sean. So again, I feel like I'm in good company with Marcus O'Neill here. Number 1, The Last of Us Part 2. We finally heard it from someone tonight.
I mean, I love Marcus, fellow Canadian, wonderful dude. The Last of Us. There's no way. There's no way, man. But sorry, not on this show.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay. I mean, this was not the year for The Last of Us Part 2 for me.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to get back to it at some point. I'm going to go with Mostly Martinez, and he says, number 3, Ghost of Tsushima, which is a game I really loved this year. One of my favorite games.
I got to get my hands on that one.
On PlayStation. Again, I wish was on Xbox, but unfortunately is PlayStation exclusive. Number 2, The Last of Us Part 2. But number 1, he agrees with you, Sean. Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Thank you.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
All right.
You know what's up.
Someone had to go with it. And then Russell England says Assassin's Creed Valhalla, number 3. Watch Dogs Legion, number 2, which is a game we didn't talk about tonight. A game that I really liked, but looking back on it, it just didn't crack my list this year. But I also played way too many games this year. I look back on my achievements this year, Sean. I'd finished over 50 games on
You're
Xbox alone.
insane. You're insane.
Well, it actually goes in contrast to what you were talking about with this year, Sean, where you had more of a distracted year, Sean, whereas I literally had the opposite because of working from home.
Yeah.
Gave me an extra like 3 hours a day to play games.
My God,
that I
that's
normally would
awesome.
have.
Yeah.
So I played through so many more games this year. And then number one for Russell was Yakuza, Like a Dragon.
Love that.
Which again, I think it's a great pick if you are a Yakuza fan. And I know I couldn't get into it, but I'm glad to see a lot of people having fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, Argo. He actually gave us a top 5. So I'm going to read off his number. Top
I like
5.
it.
His number 5, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Number 4, Hades. Number 3, Animal Crossing: New Horizons.
Number 3.
Number 2, I know, Ghost of Tsushima was his number 2, and then The Last of Us Part 2 was his number 1.
Oh my God, with The Last of
game.
Us, yeah.
A lot of people for The Last of Us, man. I mean, people like that game. Next up, Xavier Reyes. He says Ghost of Tsushima, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and The Last of Us.
My
Part 2.
God.
My God.
I want
Someone here Last of Us Part
rationale.
2.
I want you guys hit me up in the Discord or on Twitter on why. What? Oh my goodness. Okay, keep going.
We got a couple more, Sean. We got Joel, aka Falcon, at Joel, aka Falcon. He says number 3, Clubhouse Games, 51 classic games. Number 2, Animal Crossing, and number 1, Modern Warfare. Again,
Modern Warfare 2 was, I believe, he's breaking a couple rules here. But Modern Warfare 2 Modern Warfare came out last year.
yeah, it did. But you're allowed to pick games from last year, though. I picked Crosscode as my number 1 game, Sean.
I guess.
So I guess. No, I mean, Modern Warfare got a lot of support this year, especially with Warzone. Because I guess you could even just say Warzone, and that would technically be a 2020 game.
That's fair.
So it does technically count. I'll give it to Joel. He's a good friend.
Okay.
Next up, we got Pat, who says number 3, Spiritfarer. Number 2, Immortals: Phoenix Rising, and then number 1, Animal Crossing: New Horizons. Sean, you love to see it.
Okay.
You love to see it.
I feel like you're struggling with your voice a little bit, so you take a sip of water while I wax poetic a little bit on Spiritfarer. I wanted to give this one a shout out, but I played my cards incorrectly. But I am so glad to see Pat. Is it Championi? Can I just like full out Italian that? Spiritfarer is a gorgeous game. Whenever I put this on and played it, Chelsea would walk by and go, she thought I was playing Dust, an Elysian Tale. Amazing animation, a beautiful story, very easy to get into this and just kind of like wander around, but with very specific tasks that you've got to do. And I don't think that I've ever had such a good time pressing the hug button in a game. You just walk up to a character and there's some that are like, they have like this genuine surprise, like they weren't expecting you to show such affection. You give them a big old like comfy hug, and it's just nice. Like in a year where I think for the same reason a lot of people loved Animal Crossing, I love Spiritfarer, and I'm going to be getting back to this as well. Very unique, and this game showed up. I want to say that this was the game after Keanu did his thing at E3. I think Spiritfarer showed up afterwards, and I remember thinking like,
Yeah.
okay, yawn. Like I'm so not interested in this. I just saw Keanu Reeves like 50 feet away. I was so hyped about this, and then they do this. But I couldn't have been more wrong. Spiritfarer is a very special game that a lot of people should play. So shout out to Pat for showing some love to Spiritfarer.
Another Game Pass game, Sean. So many good Game Pass games this year.
Yeah, that was really good.
A game that I for whatever reason just never got to this year. It's been installed on my Xbox pretty much ever since I got my Series X, and I've never played it. I still need to at some point. And that's it. And that's everyone in the chat.
That's
And
everyone.
of course, before we start giving away codes, of course, if anyone else wants to throw their topics in here, I think it'll be good. But just to kind of sum up things, though, and this kind of goes with what we saw in the chat too. Again, it goes back to what we were talking about at the top of the show, Sean. Lots of good quality games this year, and honestly, even though there wasn't really a front runner, although again, you could argue that for Xbox specifically, Ori has to be the front runner.
Yep.
There wasn't really an obvious one game that was the big defining game of 2020.
Ori. I said that. It was Ori. That was the obvious one.
Okay. But I mean, it just goes to show like everyone's tastes are different. And
That's
I
for
love
sure.
seeing that from other people and kind of discovering like what each person really likes. And then that because I love discovering new games. It's something that I've always been really passionate about. It's the reason why I have a giant shelf of games behind me.
Yeah.
Because I love just diving back into playing old games and kind of learning more about them. I love hearing what everyone's kind of big picks are for the year. And it was super cool to get to interact with the chat tonight and kind of see what everyone else's takes are on it. Because again, I can imagine that everyone's personal list is going to be very different from ours. And again, that's why we talk about games, man. It's super cool.
Okay, Ryan, I picked a winner, by the way, for the Game Pass code. I want to give a shout out to Pat. I want to say Championi. Please reach out to me on Twitter, or is there a DM service on the YouTube channel? Can they leave a way for us to get a hold of them?
No, so they'll actually either have to DM you on Twitter, or they can email us probably at like the xboxdrive@gmail.com.
Good call.
Right?
Good call. Yeah, definitely. So, Pat, if you're still here in the chat, thank you for showing love to Spiritfarer, a wonderful game that is on Game Pass. So, we want to reward you for being here. And I want to thank everybody for being part of the chat and participating. It's so much fun to do this live. It's rare that we get to do this. And I'll pick a code from the Jenga Tower of Power back there, and that code is yours, my friend. That's it.
And it could be anything too, because there's a whole bunch of
could be a year.
Different tallies. It could be a year. That it could be 3 months. It could be a month.
Yep.
Last thing is, well, we're gonna get to Nathan Thomas because he actually submitted his top 3 in the chat as well. So we've got Assassin's Creed Valhalla number 3, Ghost of Tsushima at number 2, and then Final Fantasy VII Remake was Nathan Thomas's favorite game this year. And again, another fantastic game from Square Enix, and I'm so excited for that game to be coming to Xbox this year, Sean.
Shout out to all the people who don't like Xbox watching and listening to our show, man. Thanks for being here, guys. I got all these Sony exclusives.
Don't like it, Sean.
I'm just kidding.
What?
I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
should be Ori. Ori's the right answer.
I mean, to be fair though, Sean, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you here. A lot of the games that I personally enjoyed this year were also on PlayStation or other platforms. Like, there were a lot of good games on Xbox from third parties, and then we got a couple from Microsoft first party, but yeah, man, there was a lot of good exclusive on other consoles as well this year. So definitely there's part of a reason why we are seeing kind of an influx of that. And I definitely think it is definitely warranted. But obviously for us, Sean, we're Xbox. We only play Xbox, right? We're only allowed to enjoy things on Xbox.
That's true. I'm turning into one, maybe.
Yeah.
Also, Hades is very good.
Hades is also very good. But
okay, is that it?
Definitely going to play it. I think that's it, Sean.
Okay, that is all.
I guess we're signing off for the night. So before we go, Sean, plugs go.
I've had so much fun recapping the year that was 2020. You guys can find me on Twitter at Sean Capri, Sean like Connor, Capri like the pants. And if you like what we do here on the Xbox Drive, as I do another show called We the Gamercast, and run a Patreon at patreon.com/YumiCapri. You can support us there, and it helps us keep the show looking great and sounding great and encouraging us to do bigger and better things. And that is all for me, Ryan Turford. How about you?
Well, as for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. That's TURFORD. You can also find us on Twitter at The Xbox Drive, or right here on YouTube at youtube.com/The Xbox Drive. We're on podcast services around the globe. And once again, if you haven't subscribed already and you like what we do and you want more Game Pass, because everyone needs more Game Pass, when we hit 500 subscribers, we'll be giving away a 1-year Game Pass code to one of y'all. So definitely subscribe to the channel as well. But for Sean Capri, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been The Extra Mile, and we out. Ball.
This was a great year of gaming. Almost forgot to yell at the end. Ball.